Hop on with us as we dive into the latest topics, share some laughs, and bring you insightful conversations in and around the realm of ag. From down-home wisdom to cutting-edge tech, we've got what you need to fuel your curiosity. So tune in, relax, and let's kick back. On the Tailgate, presented by Wade Incorporated.
All right, welcome back to another episode on the Tailgate. I'm your host, Cade Moody. Got Gaston Line in the co-host spot, backed by popular demand. President and CEO of Wade Incorporated, Wade Litton, with us today, and a special guest, Mr. Douglas Scarboro, Vice President, Regional Executive of the Memphis Branch of the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. Mr. Douglas, thank you for being here with us today, making time to come talk to us.
Not a problem. You got to put my senior on there.
Oh, Senior Vice President.
I noticed that.
Man. My goodness.
Come on, Kate.
Oh for 1. But look, yes, Mr. Senior Vice President. Look, want to talk to you, just kind of tell us about what you do, how you got to where you are, and then we'll just talk a little bit about the Fed and see if we can get a basic understanding of what all y'all do on a daily basis.
Absolutely. Well, like you said, Senior Vice President, Regional Executive with the Memphis Branch, St. Louis Fed, and cover 72 county areas. So here in Mississippi, basically from the top of Mississippi down to Highway 82, Western Tennessee, Northeastern Arkansas. Main part of my job is exchange of economic information. So, some other functions, but, really it's having conversations with a number of people in the economy, really focused on anecdotal information. So that's information point in time, usually looking forward. We have a lot of statistical information, and that is usually point in time and looking backwards. But then this anecdotal information is really helpful, especially in times like now where things are relatively uncertain, to be able to give us a sense of what's going to happen.
So you're reporting that back to the top, I guess.
Absolutely. So a number of different ways to go about doing that. Yeah. Where I'm having conversations. I was on a couple phone calls this morning when we're doing this visit. I'll leave from here, go to Oxford, talk to some more people. Then we'll also have a number of meetings. So, for instance, Wade is on our industry council for agribusiness. We meet 2 times a year, and we have 3 different other industry councils, and we bring a number of people in from all over the St. Louis Fed district. So 7 states we have, including my area, which is, like I said, Mississippi, Arkansas, Tennessee. We have all of Arkansas, and then as you get into Indiana, Illinois, Missouri as well. We'll bring those individuals in, and then we'll have conversations with them. So we're talking about agribusiness, we'll talk about real estate, we'll talk about healthcare, and we're talking about transportation, which is the industry council I run. Gather all that information. We have regional economists that are in St. Louis. We give information to regional economists. They're gathering information. And then what happens is when our president, Alberto Musalem, is preparing for the Federal Open Market Committee, so that's 8 times a year, we all get together. So get together and basically go through and look at what the data is and what it's saying, and then that helps him to be able to make his statement for the FOMC.
Well, before we get too far in the weeds, I want to know, how in the world did you get to this point? I mean, is it something you sought out, or
absolutely?
Did it just...
When I was a little baby, I started looking. No. Well, one thing I do need to do at the top is give my disclaimer. So, as a Federal Reserve employee, that these views are my own views and not the views of the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis or of the Federal Reserve System. The only person that speaks on behalf of the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis is our president, Alberto Musalem. Only person who speaks on behalf of the Federal Reserve System is Jerome Powell. The way I got into this work, it was, I had a deliberately nonlinear path. So I have, education in different areas where I have a doctorate degree in education, but also an undergraduate degree in political science and master's degrees in business and healthcare. And my thought pattern was about being able to get a sense of, how a city evolves based upon different factors that came out of going to Morehouse College. And I was there during the Olympics. I was there from 93 to 97. When I was there, I got to see a city change and evolve. So I wanted to have this sense of different areas. Ultimately, the way I got to the Fed was, one, having done work that was directly related to not only relationship building, where I worked at a nonprofit in Memphis doing that work, but then also that was deliberately focused on building the economy, where I worked with the city of Memphis for a number of years, running the Office of Talent and Human Capital. My predecessor at the time, we would have a number of conversations, and it was very aligned with what I had done in previous jobs and what I looked at with higher education with what the Fed does. Because a lot of people would know the Fed for interest rates, or know the Fed for monetary policy and the like, but there's a lot of work that we're doing that is directly informed by what's happening in the economy, and that's the work that I was doing.
That's impressive.
No, thank you.
I mean,
thank you.
It is. It's
Well,
a very.
I'm sitting there reading your bio
yeah.
too, and I mean it's got it's. Let's see, it's 3 more paragraphs than mine would be. So, for those listeners, there's 4 paragraphs total. But first off, Wade, I'm surprised you don't make us read some kind of disclaimer like he read on this podcast.
Well, the information the Federal Reserve puts out is much more important and affects much more people than anything we're saying here. And Douglas is the perfect guy to represent them here today. And when I was at the meeting, at the Agribusiness Council meeting back this spring, one of the things that Alberto, the president, had said was, hey, community outreach, people need to know how the Federal Reserve is working on behalf of the everyday citizen, what we're looking at to try to make the best decisions that they can, and the community outreach part. And I thought it'd be a great opportunity to get Douglas on here because, most people, they don't really know what the Fed's job is. They just think, hey, they set the interest rate, really. So I thought it was a great opportunity for our listeners to hear Douglas speak and talk about all the important things they do at the Fed.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I think that's a great, a segue into kind of what are the fundamentals of the Fed? What does, the people that think it's just setting the interest rate, what do they need to know? And then what are some specifics? And Wade, you can talk about, projects that you worked on or in your position with them and anything you've seen with your time there. Just kind of give us the 10,000-foot view.
No, absolutely. Probably the biggest thing about the Fed is, 3 main parts. People hear Federal Reserve, you think of a one entity, and we are, one Fed, but it has 3 main parts. One, you have the Board of Governors, and that's in Washington, D.C. So it's a quasi-governmental organization, and those mostly, government employees, and they're there and they're helping with, the setting of monetary policy. But then you have, which was a very ingenious structure that they set up over 100 years ago, because this is the 3rd iteration at a central bank for the country. So then you have regional reserve banks. So you have the D.C. part, then you have regional reserve banks, 12 of those across the nation. And, majority of them along the eastern seaboard, because in 1913, when this was when the Federal Reserve was being set up, that's where a majority of the American population was. St. Louis at that time was about the 4th largest by population in the United States, so that's the reason that St. Louis has a regional reserve bank there. We'll give you a question, we'll give you an answer for trivia. There's only one state that I'm sure, and trivia questions always come up about Federal Reserve, so depends on where you're hanging out. But there's only one state that has 2 heads of regional reserve banks, and that's the state of Missouri. We have one in St. Louis and one in Kansas City. So then you have the mixture portion. So I talked about Board of Governors, which is one portion. I talked about the regional reserve banks, which are non-government, which is more like a private bank. Then you have the Federal Open Market Committee, and that's the one you hear a lot about. And the thing that is wonderful about this structure is that you had the Federal Open Market Committee is a combination of the 2. So when they come together and they meet 8 times a year, you have 12 individuals representing all across the country. Then you have individuals that are there in Washington, D.C., and then they come and they're actually voting. And the way the voting takes place is, you can read in the statement at the bottom and see who said, who agreed or who disagreed. And the thing that is really good about it is that even though you may only see, because there's a rotation of regional banks of when they vote, but everybody gives their opinion. So every time when Wade is coming twice a year with the industry council and he's giving information, that information is going in. So when Alberto is talking with the other presidents and with the other governors that are there, the information is always presented.
And that meeting's occurring. Is that in Memphis? The
No,
one
that's
you're
in
going.
St.
That's in
Louis.
St. Louis.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I got you. I got you.
The industry council is twice a year in St. Louis.
Yeah, and you're getting representation from everybody across the country, right? They're getting feedback and then taking that information for their comments, and that's where I think the system is works so well.
Yeah, I mean, even if you would talk about a cycle, so we just had an FOMC meeting recently, and it starts the cycle again. So where it starts is we'll have industry council meetings. Those are twice a year. I'm having conversations, but then you have board meetings. So not only do you have the 12 regional reserve banks, but then you also have each one of those, or majority, not everyone, I think 9 of them. 9 of the regional reserve banks have branches. So St. Louis, we have a branch in Memphis, we have a branch in Little Rock, we have a branch in Louisville. They have meetings as well, so they have board members. So, here in the Mississippi and Greenwood community, Hank Reichley is on our board. So 8 times a year, Hank is coming to Memphis, or if we have a meeting somewhere else, and he's giving us information. The thing that happens at each one of those meetings is he's taking conversations that he had in district, and he's bringing those to us. So the report is given to us about things that are happening right here in your community. So, you're very, very well represented. Hank does a wonderful job. You're very well represented at the FOMC table because information has come, directly from here in the Mississippi community that then is going up for that conversation. And then the thing, like I said, is great because the same thing is happening. So, as we're looking at, for instance, now where you have weather affecting different parts of the nation, well, we're going to have a regional reserve. We're going to have a branch meeting in Memphis, but somebody else is going to have a branch meeting in Seattle. If they have different weather, different patterns there, they're going to have different conversations and different input.
Yeah, and I know when Hank's meetings are because he does a great job of reaching out to you. He's going to call me every time. Give me some feedback here, feedback there. And he's got a lot of people that he reaches out to because he does a good job representing our area to make sure that Douglas is hearing what's happening.
It's a very complex system. Like you describing it, how it trickles down, and having Hank reach out to people. It just keeps on going forever. So I'm sure you're getting some very interesting conversation and opinions in those meetings.
You do, and especially you're always looking for, key pieces of information, but also you're looking for trends. And you look for things like, we have conversations, like I said, it's 8 times a year. And we have, conversations in between there where I'm talking to a number of people in the economy. And you're looking for, what's the trend that's happening?
What are those opinions and trends that you're seeing?
The trend now is uncertainty.
Yeah.
Like we hear that, I know in the last FOMC statement, they talked about, the number of times they heard uncertainty. And it is because of, the current environment with trade, with tariffs, that you've seen some pause in investment, some pause in consumer confidence or decrease in consumer confidence. And it is because, it's just people don't know, businesses don't know exactly where to invest because you don't know what's going to happen, say a week or 2 weeks or a month from now. Individuals from a consumer confidence standpoint don't know how or can't necessarily feel confident about going and purchasing something because you don't know exactly what's going to happen. I think I can't remember who to attribute it to, but saw a quote that businesses said, I can manage for a good economy, I can manage for a bad economy. It's hard for me to manage for an uncertain economy, and that's what we're seeing now.
Yeah, and I think Gaston, your department probably sees this to a level of a certain extremity with some drone parts and stuff coming in, and it's just the level, the amount of fluctuation in prices week to week there for a while was unbelievable, unmanageable, really, and that's we see it every day. And we were talking before we got on the air or before we got on the podcast about I think Jerome Powell just recently made a comment. People are hammering him. When are you going to drop the rate? When's the rate come down? All that stuff. And he basically said, look, with the tariffs doing what they're doing, and I don't know if the uncertainty word was used, but in essence, that's what he was referring to. Was there's a level of uncertainty there that they're not moving right now. It is what it is, and I don't know the time frame, but that was kind of what we took away from that. So the topics and trends, continuing that conversation. and I'm sure the uncertainty word specific to the ag sector is there as well. What are some things, maybe specific to our district or our area, being North Mississippi and Eastern Arkansas, heavy agricultural presence? What are some trends and some feedback that y'all are getting from those areas?
Wet.
Yeah.
Wet. Things are wet, and because things are wet, they are delayed. Yeah, we do hear a good amount, especially in our in Memphis zone, Little Rock zone. We do get a lot of ag information and concern about for this season about what that productivity, what that yield will look like, and what I'm hearing is that lower yield, things are going into the ground later on, and because of that, you're going to have potentially depressed season. The big thing I hear about as well is that from not only farmers but anybody that's involved in agriculture, so bankers as well, is questions about Farm Bill. So usually there, like I said, we look for themes, and there's themes about questions about Farm Bill. Usually from the ag bankers and all bankers, there's questions about regulation. But the real, if there's one word, as I said earlier, the theme was uncertainty. Here, the theme would be wet.
Yeah.
A month of rain.
Can you give your opinion or tell us what these industry leaders' outlook would be on the current climate of ag specifically? And you can speak on our economy as a whole, but we're all intertwined in this right here. And, sometimes we think about down the road, but then we try to stay in the moment. And, you have to kind of be in both at the same time. But what are you hearing? What's your opinion of tomorrow and a year from now, 5 years from now?
I'll say, from what I hear, and probably, was actually having a conversation recently and, echoing one of actually a person's agricultural lending, and he was saying that you see this downward trend, but the way it feels. So you can look at it, step back, look several months later, and you see potential kind of slow downward trend in not only purchasing but in an output. But the way he described it was 2 steps down, 1 step up, 2 steps down, 1 step up, 2 steps down, 1 step up. So with that, you are experiencing this change, but as you're experiencing it, it's kind of a slow down. One of the things I've seen with that, and because of that, it does allow people and it does allow businesses to adjust a little bit more. A past example, because we're always are looking to past examples of things that have happened in the economy to be able to try to predict or get it, at least get comfortable. It's kind of human nature, I would think, to get comfortable with what may happen in the future is one of the things about commercial real estate. So coming out of the pandemic, there was a big, huge concern about the devaluation of commercial real estate due to use, because a lot more people were working at home than are working now. But one of the things I did hear early on and heard and seen consistently was that there was so much conversation about it. It was a lot more time for people to prepare. Where I'm sure I'll talk to a commercial real estate guy tomorrow, and he or a lady tomorrow, and they'll tell me like, no, it's still pretty bad. But it did give them more time to be able to prepare. So because of that, you saw more people able to react to it. Very much like the quote earlier, where I can prepare for a bad economy. So if I start to see that downward trend of that 2 steps down, 1 step up, then I can start to prepare for it.
Yeah, and speaking of COVID, you were in your current position through
I
that.
was.
How was that?
Interesting. I have kidded before, but it is true. Where I had a former colleague, and say the Chinese proverb, "May we live in interesting times." I was like, so I've been with the Fed 10 years. I was like, all the times don't have to be so interesting. Like we can have something that's a little calmer. But no, it was interesting from a standpoint of still continue to gather data and information. During that time, it was extremely interesting. I was secretary to the Conference of Presidents, so inside of the Federal Reserve, you have the 12 regional reserve bank presidents, and things that are non-monetary policy. The Federal Reserve banks actually, do a lot of work together. So, St. Louis Fed will be doing work with the Atlanta Fed and the Dallas Fed, and you have the presidents get together and talk about, what this work is. So I was the secretary for that group, and in doing that during the pandemic, you were able to see, the quick action where they meet 8 times a year. But, during this time, you had a meeting on a Sunday, and they had a rate cut. I think it was a 50 basis point rate cut. Doing that, I got to hear them talk about the 13-3 facilities and being able to stand up, because one of the things, we are known for is being the lender of last resort and being able to create a really stable system of, financial system for not only the United States, but for the world. And, seeing that happen, literally doing some of the most uncertain, different times and being able to see that happen and being a part of that was probably the one of the biggest things I remember.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You go into these meetings now and you hear from these community folks, and you may not know exactly what they're going to say, but you probably got a pretty good idea of maybe the direction that things are going, now. I can't imagine what you were walking into some of those meetings during COVID. I mean, you had no idea.
Well, first you weren't even walking into me.
Yeah, that's right. Skyping in.
And the thing is, I told, because, working at the branch as opposed to working at head office, you did have, a slight advantage, because a lot of the meetings that we were already doing where, I would be hired and have my intern with me here today that's from Atlanta. And we would have been interviewing them and doing that online. But even that was a process where we had to go through then using Skype and using different systems and figuring it out. The conversations that you would hear and the ways that you would be able to connect with people was interesting, because it was very different where you would have, especially say here in the South, as opposed to, I still remember going probably. It may have been 2021, late 21, early 22, and there was parts of our district and here in the South where, the comment I heard was, it looked like the pandemic never happened, so far as interaction and people, working and being in contact and with one another. And during that time frame, I went to, was coming out and I went to Washington, D.C. for a meeting, and there was and it seems like there, the pandemic was still going. So you had this, going into a meeting, you're hearing different things. It was even just different from the level of interaction and how much people were still, interacting and kind of what that looked like.
Yeah. No, we lived that. I moved from Chattanooga, Tennessee to Greenwood, Mississippi in 2020.
Uh-huh.
And we came out, got out of the moving truck with our masks on. And Gaston's like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, sorry. I forgot it didn't hit here."
Yeah. It was amazing. I mean, just even different communities in North Mississippi, how people, reacted differently, and it was just so different. And probably from your time here and then going up to D.C., it was a stark difference on how people were treating that at that time.
Absolutely. And one of the biggest things I would say is, stark difference and, won't say silver lining, but one of the things that has changed since the pandemic is the frequency of data. So data now that, reports that we would have been getting every 3 months, every month, you can get data now on, so literally every day, sometimes, by the hour, and it will be really, I still remember, 2 different kinds of data, some during the pandemic, some post-pandemic, that I look at from time to time, and just the rapidness of them coming out. During the pandemic, one of the things I used to look at a lot was cell phone tower data. You could look at 2: cell phone tower data, and you could look at card access data. And if you wanted to see, how much personal activity, how much people were moving around, you could see based upon what the movements were on the cell tower, and you could see card access to see if they were actually going into the building. The one looking at, now where we are in June 2025 is looking at credit card and bank card data, and even kind of the change that's happened in which form of currency that people use. That used to be a lot more cash. I think it's now that debit cards have taken over. But you can see what that usage rate is, and you can see it literally on a daily basis. And that has been a change in just the frequency of the data that we're able to get.
I need that report on my wife.
Yeah. I was going to say you can't leave out crypto now. That's an interesting topic.
Is another interesting topic. One of the things that I do is each one of my interns has a research project, and every summer I have them, do a number of things, but they also do a research project, present it to the board at the end of the summer, and have the summer working on investigating AI agents. But probably about 3 or 4 years ago, that was on cryptocurrency, and that was, of course, all the rage, and it's been interesting seeing, not only from a standpoint of stable coins to just, crypto writ large of, what the interest level has been in that, and, just the thought of new uses of currency as things have evolved.
Yeah, that's another episode in itself. I didn't do my research on crypto, Gaston.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to see what your opinion was. It's taken over right now. I can get you
some really good experts. It's one of the things I will say is, St. Louis Fed and other regional reserve banks very much like that, where we have, literally an award-winning team ranked, one of the highest ranked research teams we have in St. Louis. Usually about 30 PhDs there, headed by our Director of Research, Carlos Garriga, and they have, wonderful information. They produce on a number of different things. The thing that's really good is that, you hire these really smart people, and they come in and they research a lot of things that, they have interest in. When I first got to the Fed, I would think about, all right, I'm having a meeting, we're bringing economists in, because one of the things that happens is every board meeting that we have, an economist comes in for that board meeting, and they're going to talk about one of their areas of research. And my thought pattern was, all right, let me see what the people in the community are interested in hearing about. And, the person's been researching, they're going to talk about what they've been researching. I can tell you to a T that they would research things, and it would, without a doubt, come up, where we have folks that were talking about tariffs in China. We will have ones that were talking about cryptocurrency. We have ones that are talking about how the actions of the FOMC affecting stock market prices. And this is research they would have been doing years before things happen in the market, and then they come in and they're talking about it. So it's, kudos to that research team that's in St. Louis. They do a wonderful job, and I can't, I would be remiss if I did not put a plug in for Fred as well. That's one of our products. So if you don't use Fred, I would say, a couple takeaways. Fred being one big takeaway. It's a product of the St. Louis Fed. It's really easy. It's data that it can either the app or either online. Literally, you go in and you can type in Mississippi unemployment. It's going to provide you charts and data, and you can easily download it to a PDF or PowerPoint. But then it's going to provide you a lot of information as well. Fred is one of the most used resources, and it's fabulous.
Yeah, and that's good to know too. You're talking about the all the PhDs y'all got, the assets that y'all have in the Fed, having all that knowledge and all that brain power in there as a resource. That's reassuring for us as the citizens.
Lots of data points.
Lots of
data points.
Some really, as Chair Powell said, we have some really smart, really hard-working people at the Fed.
Yeah. Yeah, what you got to is, like Gaston mentioned, and even before crypto, all the changes, all the stuff that you've got to take into account across the vast area that all the differing communities and then economies that make up all the 12 reserves. It's you got to have some smart people looking at the right things to guide you down the right path.
Yeah, smart people that are mission and mandate driven, because we have two main things that we do: stable prices and maximum sustainable employment. And on both sides of that coin, always try to balance. And it's really good to have folks that are waking up every day really smart, that are helping us get to more stable prices over time, and then also get into maximum sustainable employment. One of the things that do talk about is Fed independence, and one of the things we've seen over time is more stable prices over time with having a Federal Reserve. because, as I said earlier, we were started 1913, but it was after a market crash or an instability in the market in 1907, and that was due to speculation, but also loose monetary policy. And one of the things that has been, you can see literally charts, and you see it over time, because of the structure of the Fed that I talked about earlier, where you have that structure where you have DC-based function, you have the regional reserve bank function. What it's allowed for us to be able to do is have much more stable inflation over time, and also have a much more stable economy. And that's not even just we say it, of course, but we've also seen others like at the IMF and seen Goldman Sachs have done studies and showed that independence has led us to be able to have a much more stable economy.
Well, I want to probably segue into talking about the Beige Book. We need a lesson on that. Kate and I were trying to look it up a little bit beforehand, but I think this will segue into it. What is your approach when you are reporting back to maybe who is out writing the Beige Book notes and everything? But what are you kind of hitting the hot topics? Or are you covering everything? What's your how do you compile all that data and then get it into, I assume, a short amount of time to present that?
Yeah,
and what is it for those that didn't
Sure.
chat GPT at 30 minutes?
Yeah, we'll get to it. I mean, so you can speak on that, but I just want to know how in the world you get it all together when you're hearing from so many different industries, at one time.
Absolutely. Well, give a hat tip to one of our regional economists, Chuck Gaskin. He does a great job, not only for St. Louis Fed, but he also does a lot of work for the whole system with getting that Beige Book together. He's even on a different podcast. He's even won a couple different Beige awards for the work he's doing that has gotten it together. So we have, anecdotal information that we're gathering. So as I mentioned, all the different ways I'm having conversations with people. I'm running my board meeting. Those reports go into Chuck and go into a few others, and then it's all gathered together. And what they do is look for the trends, and then we'll have a conversation, and we'll say, all right, this time we're looking and we're concerned about credit risk, or this time we're concerned, or we want to know, won't say concern, we want to know more about credit risk. We want to know more about advanced manufacturing. And having those as drivers, we'll have conversations and then be able to give them information. And then when they see all of those trends come in, then they put that together for the Beige Book. The thing about the Beige Book is different from, statistical information. I said largely, not always, is looking backwards. The Beige Book is going to be looking forward. So this is conversations, anecdotal information, sense of, what people are seeing on the horizon, that what may happen. I do tell people that the Fed is, wild and crazy. So the Beige Book is named Beige because it was a beige book. There is
Y'all are wild and crazy.
wild and crazy. There are other color books. You would have heard on the last FOMC conference, Jerome Powell talked about the Teal Book, and that one has more detailed information. That one comes out. The Teal Book comes out on a 5-year delay because obviously it's got some key information. And the Beige Book comes out 8 times a year. So it's in conjunction. So part of that I was talking about earlier with that FOMC cycle and when things happen. Part of that FOMC cycle, you'll have that Beige Book that comes out that will be able to give you more information. And when it comes out, it is done for each district. So you have, you kind of look for the nation, but you'll look and it'll be for the St. Louis district. It'll look for all the other regional reserve banks and what's happening in their districts. And then you'll see, you hear conversations, and obviously, it's based upon what that particular area is seeing. Which, like I was, when I was talking about earlier with climate, you may see something different happen in Memphis than you see happen in Seattle. So you can be able to go through, and that's if I told people anything to take, we have a lot of data, a lot of information. You can go to stlouisfed.org and see our information. I would say one of the biggest things is read the Beige Book and then look at Fred. Read, between those two, that's going to give you a balance of that statistical data and give you a balance of that anecdotal data. Because the Beige Book is Every now and then there may be some charts or graphs in there, but it really is just straight layman's language, and it's going to be something that everybody can be able to absorb and digest.
Good deal.
You can tell the Fed pays attention to all the details because it's the beige book, not the brown book. It's the teal book, not the green book. So even that.
That's right. Distinctions in color.
There you go.
You wonder how many meetings were had to determine the name of the book. Well, look, talk about some stuff you got coming up. What upcoming events you got, and you know, what are they going to be on, and you know, that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. So we do, I focus on the Memphis zone. I talk about the 72 counties, North Mississippi, Western Tennessee, Northeast Arkansas. And what we do is make sure that we're having events that are all around, you know, my zone and all around the district. We're going to have a regional economic briefing, and that's going to be October 2nd. That's going to be in Dyersburg, Tennessee. The regional economic briefing, actually, the person I talked about, Chuck Gaskin, he's going to actually come out. He'll be there in Dyersburg, and he'll have conversation, talk about research that's specific to, you know, the Western Tennessee area, and you know, invite and welcome the community out. We actually have a board member that's there, Jeff Agee. That's a banker there in Dyersburg, so he'll assist with that as well. Then we have breakfasts with the Fed. So this is a session where we have the economists there, and they come out and they, you know, literally before we're having our board meeting, you know, I always tell the economists I like it because, you know, if you believe in repetitive learning, that's what I do. So I get to learn a lot of this information pretty quick. They'll come and they'll have a presentation at our board meeting, but that morning they'll make a presentation that's for the community. And that's the breakfast with the Fed, and that's going to be October 3rd, and that's going to be in Memphis. So we'll have that in East Memphis. And then the last is we're going to have a conference that's going to be October 22nd and 23rd. It's with our community development function, and that's called Crossing the Credit Barrier. And with that, we will actually have, you know, speakers that will come in, and they will, you know, talk about, you know, credit barrier, and talk about, give people more information on, you know, rich data that's affecting their community, and then specifically the low to moderate income community, or LMI community. And then last one, you know, I talked about our October events. One, you'll see we'll have a community of development event that will actually be here in, it'll be in Mississippi Valley State. It's going to be here, you know, really close to you all, and our president will be there, Alberta Masalam. So you'll see, you know, more information come out about that, because, you know, that'll be in conjunction with the visit that we have to the area. So over there at Mississippi Valley State, and he'll come in and he'll be that morning.
Bring him by here.
You know
Love
what?
the meetings.
Actually, that's a good idea.
Yeah. Give him a tour.
Well, any last minute questions, thoughts,
Well-
anything we haven't touched on that you want to speak to?
I guess outlook. I mean, that's what a lot of people want to hear, you know, just kind of closing things up. But, you know, inflation, interest rates, I mean, that's just that's what's on top of people's mind right now. What do you see? I mean, what is it anything that's going to change tomorrow, or is it going to be drawn out a little
people
longer?
have been saying uncertainty.
You know?
I'm sure something will happen tomorrow that,
Yeah.
that we had no idea about today. But, you know, from interest rates to inflations to trade to tariffs, the thing I really will say, I talked about, you know, a number of economists talked about us gathering anecdotal information. It truly is data dependent. We, you know, are gathering information, we're gathering data, so that way we can make the best decision possible. Folks will ask about, you know, what they think will happen, and, you know, that's why we do so much work to be able to get a sense from, you know, our community. Like I said, we're right here in your community, and want to get the best sense of what's happening directly from you.
Yeah. And look, that's my favorite thing about doing this podcast is learning about things, learning about, you know, people and their jobs and things that I had that's all around me that I had no idea about. Like the flow of information from Greenwood, Mississippi to Memphis to St. Louis to D.C. in that beige book. And that's something I mean, before prepping for this today and this conversation, I had no idea how it got there. And knowing now how Wade's involved and Hank's involved, and that those meetings occur, and I mean, that's impressive. And it goes to show, just get involved. Get involved in your community and talk to the people. And then if there is more ability to make change around you than people are aware. You see things happening in D.C. or St. Louis and Memphis, and you're like, well, they don't care about me. No, we're begging for information. We need to communicate that, and that's a good takeaway from this, and something I learned today, and I'm sure a lot of people did as well.
No, I think that's great statement. Even we think so much about getting data from communities, but I like the way you said that data flow as it goes. Comes from Greenwood, comes to Memphis, goes to St. Louis, goes to Washington D.C. I can almost even think of a schematic or something that would be on Instagram or LinkedIn or the like, and it goes to show you of just the importance of gathering information, the importance of continuously listening to the community, and then understanding that's a process. You got to repeat the process. You got to improve the process over time. But that's it. That is key to what we do.
Yeah, and I think about our industry council meetings, and the different industry councils meet, and then they come after they meet and they do a report out. And the president of the St. Louis Fed, President Alberto, he is listening intensely, and he's asking specific questions. So you think about kind of what you just said, Kate, and what we've been talking about. When they're sitting at that FOMC meeting, maybe something that he heard from somebody that came from Greenwood, Mississippi is in the back of his mind when they're having conversations or making so it's powerful stuff. It's powerful stuff that it's a total outreach into the community. It's not just people saying, well, this is what I read in the paper, or this is what I've heard somewhere else. They're hearing it from the source, from the people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we always are welcoming more information or more. If somebody wants, if I haven't contacted you and you want to have a conversation, but also there's multiple ways. Talked about stlouisfed.org, but there's literally you can go on and there's, if you want to give your opinion on the economy, we have a list of questions and it's a survey. Feel free to contact me. I can send you a survey, and you can be able to give your information directly. So it's no individual or no community or no business that we're not listening to.
Wow.
I'm about to start shooting my opinions to you. Can you run them up the ladder for me?
I'll run them up the ladder. Yeah.
I like it.
Oh, man. Well, look, fantastic conversation. Douglas, I appreciate you coming on, spending a little time with us here on the tailgate.
It's like I'm waiting on a real tailgate.
We talked about it. Riggs is
I'm
actually
waiting on a real. I grew up and my grandfather was a farmer, so when you said on the tailgate, I was like, I literally remember when we would go up on Saturday afternoons, and when he got done with the day, you sit on the back of the tailgate, he's looking out, he's telling you what went on.
That's where the real stuff happens, right there on the back of the
is.
tailgate.
That's right.
That's it.
That's right.
It's our first season, so we're trying to figure all this out, and then we're gonna improve ourselves.
That's right.
There you go. So you get a tailgate, I'll come back.
Yeah,
There you go. I'll come back.
Okay, next time. Well, good deal. Well, thank you again, and we'll catch you next time on the tailgate.